Welcome back, peeps. It's episode deuce 0 of the Real Tech Talk podcast. And I want to ask you something. What does IKEA, what does Google, and Coastal Ventures, which is like the biggest venture fund in the universe, have in common? My next guest, Hasier of Ori Living, changing the game, dealing with the issues that we have in sustainability, dealing with the issues in how people are going to afford to live in cities. If you don't sit down and pay attention to the guy who's actually changing the game, I don't know what you're doing. So come on in, sit down. Oh, by the way, like and follow, make a comment. I mean, how long do I have to hustle you people for this? Stop wasting my time. We got IKEA, we got Google, we got Coastal Ventures. Let's do it. That's why we're here, bro. This is Real Tech Talk. Boom shakalaka. So who the hell are you, bro? You know, what are you into? What do you do? Dude, you can keep it real here. Tell me about these real estate traders.
Eric Brody is the managing principal of CEMVC LLC. All opinions expressed by Eric and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of CEMVC LLC. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions. Clients of CEMVC LLC may maintain positions in the securities discussed in this podcast.
All right. Well, listen, thank you so much for coming on the podcast this week. Which is really interesting, we get somebody back in robotics first time. Actually, second time. This is our second robot. He is human, but he could be a robot. Mm-hmm. And number 2, our first from Europe. We're going to Spain. We are blowing up. We were in the Middle East. We've been in America, but now we're hitting Europe. So, you know what? Hasier, which I didn't butcher, because I just learned how to say it. Thank you for coming on the podcast, brother.
That was really good.
Yeah, you like that?
Yeah, it was
all right,
good.
Good.
Thank you.
All right, so this week, and what I'm so excited to talk to you about is I'm going to give a little background about you, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong.
Okay.
All right, and then we'll go from there.
That's it.
Okay, so this is a technologist. Once again, actually, you guys weren't there, but I was at this conference where I met a compatriot of yours. This young man went to like the #1 school in America for robotics. I believe it's called the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, otherwise known as MIT.
Exactly.
So I'm right. Now, more important is I want to apologize for you having to dumb down the technology to talk to this Neanderthal in real estate, because I know you and all your friends are all talking on a level that I obviously cannot understand.
Okay.
So you're going to have to bring it down for me. Is that all right?
All good.
All right. Good. All right. So if let's get into a little bit about your background. Tell us a little bit and why you got into robotics, and then why you thought and how that impacted real estate, and then we'll ask some more macro questions. So let's hear it, Bob.
Absolutely. So I mean, as you said, I'm from Spain. You can tell from my accent.
By the way, is it Spain or is it just Spain?
Spain.
Spain. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm from San Sebastian in the north of Spain. Beautiful city. I'm an engineer by training, but I'm one of those engineers that had a lot of fundamental doubts about whether I should go into architecture or engineering.
So, by the way, for engineering and our people, are you talking about like structural, mechanical engineering?
Mechanical engineering
okay.
and robotics, so how we, think about the mechanics, the electronics, and the software that powers machines, So I went into that career, and then after doing my degree in Spain, I had the great opportunity, as you said, to come to MIT, a very special
To America.
Place.
How did that happen?
And MIT. So some of these things, a bit of luck, a bit of being in the right place at the right moment. Mm-hmm. But I found this place, specifically at MIT. Everybody knows MIT, but not everybody knows this department at MIT called the MIT Media Lab. We could talk a whole 30 minutes about it, but we don't have to. But it's a very special place where it's a bit of an anti-disciplinary department where, just to give you an example, you can find engineers working on houses while architects work on cars, or you can find musicians programming while programmers are working on instruments. So everything is upside down. That's where the rogues go in some way to innovate. And that's where I had the opportunity to be exposed to innovation in a completely new way at the MIT Media Lab. And there, I met this architect, Professor Kent Larson, who is a big visionary about the future of cities and how we can.
He didn't do the 15-minute city. He's not that guy.
He's been talking about that for more than a decade.
Okay.
He has a big TED Talk about the future of cities and how to design them more like Paris 100 years ago and less like LA now.
Okay.
So thinking really about how we can, get inspiration from the past of architecture to design the cities of the future. Again, long conversation we could have around that, but fast forward, I met him. He's an architect. Yep. I'm an engineer. and we started thinking about the challenges of real estate. And we started thinking about the challenges of real estate.
You mean like you just went and got coffee with him because this is what you were shooting the shit about with this guy?
We just like to think about innovation in general. And he had been thinking about real estate for a while, longer than me, of course. But he was thinking about the idea that real estate has two macro challenges. It has more, but two big ones that we wanted to focus on.
Okay.
One was affordability.
Now, is this his class there? They literally like, let's have this class about it? Or this is just you and him chilling on the side?
This was research. This was work that he had been thinking about and brewing about.
And then he said, I got this smart kid. I'm going to put him on the case?
So he's an architect, I'm an engineer, and when you think about these ideas that we're going to talk about in a moment, they require the combination of both fields.
Yeah, but engineering usually is like structural. You're saying you're mechanical and robotic.
Exactly. So, for example, if we are thinking about the concept of transforming spaces, which architects have been thinking about for decades.
Correct.
How can we bring mechanics, electronics, and software to make that much smarter?
Right, which we're seeing all over the place in just how we used to be the wired home, or how software, IoT, hardware, all integrating into the living space.
Exactly. But now this in the context of two massive challenges, as I was saying. Lack of affordability.
Okay.
Apartments are becoming more and more expensive. Also lack of sustainability. When you think about cities, you think about how much it takes to build a building, concrete, steel, how much we need to, heat and cool apartments. We realized that the challenge or the trick was to empower people to live large in a smaller footprint. So how can we use robotics and technology to make smaller spaces feel like if they were much larger?
Was this his thesis and you just tried to solve it? Or was this, he said, these are the two problems and here's my theory on what was actually going to solve this problem?
Yeah, so he had been thinking about the idea of bringing transformation to a space for a while. But what he hadn't done, and that's where we kind of connected, is start thinking about what does that mean? How do we build, the same way how we build cars, how we build these homes that are robotic and have all these capabilities.
All right, so basically, your solution was, okay, you can live big, you can live in a city, but how do we transform that space to increased efficiency?
Exactly. So how can we make smaller spaces that are going to be cheaper and also more sustainable, but not compromise on functionality? Living in a small space today means compromise. Nobody wants to live in a tiny prison cell. Shoebox.
Right, or what you're seeing sort of in the Eastern world, where it's these smaller and smaller and smaller spaces that they're just shoving themselves in to afford these major cities.
Exactly. But what if we could break that relationship between square footage and functionality? And what I mean is, people, specifically in this country, think that the more square footage I get, the more functional that space is going to be. What if we could break that relationship?
Or status. People like square footage for status, right?
Fair enough. But what if we could prove that the smaller square footage could be as functional or more than the bigger square footage? Mm-hmm. That's when you start changing fundamental real estate economics. Because if the small space starts becoming the more attractive, the smallest space is always going to be more affordable, because what's the biggest cost in real estate? The square footage.
The square footage, of course.
Exactly. So that's where we started kind of playing with that.
But where's the sustainability? I don't understand. Is the sustainability that you can have more people in a smaller space? What's the what's that side of it?
So think about buildings and their impact in carbon footprint. I think buildings are 40% of. Okay, so now think about what is really. Let's break that down. Think about how much steel you need to build a home, how much concrete you need to build a home, how much heating and cooling you need to maintain that home. The smaller square footage we have per person, the less carbon footprint per capita we're gonna do.
Correct.
So it's very similar in some way to the affordability conversation. The smaller the space, the more affordable, the more sustainable.
Or more efficient, and the efficiency then leads to less of a carbon footprint, and now we're sustainable.
But what if we can bring a small without bringing the negative connotations of a small, which tend to be dysfunctional, nobody wants to live in a small.
Yeah, of course.
What if we could make it feel much bigger? And that's where kind of we started working on it. And for 4 or 5 years.
So now you're in MIT, you're like, cool. So how did you attack that problem?
So we started building things and breaking shit. As simple as that. We started building prototypes. One that actually went viral online was a 200 square feet apartment. This was back in 2014. Nobody was talking about so small apartments, especially in the US. We built a prototype, and we did it as a provocation, because we said, okay, people think that living in 200 square feet is impossible.
Right.
So we're going to show you a 200 square feet apartment that has a 200 square feet living room, a 200 square feet bedroom, a 200 square feet bathroom, which is a hotel, 5-star hotel bathroom, a 200 square feet office. And we could do that by changing the space at the press of a button, with your voice, with your phone, in a matter of seconds. And that's what we did as a provocation.
Did it go viral?
It went viral on YouTube. Yeah.
Oh, really? So what's that? What YouTube video is that?
I don't know. It was like in a few days, it was more than 1 million views.
Oh,
which
wow.
back in the day was a lot. Now with
it
TikTok,
still is,
it's easier to get that these days.
But what was the video?
The video was a 200 square feet
Were
apartment.
you in it? Were you the star of the show?
Yeah, I show up, but not everybody sees it. But at the end, there's a conga dance scene that I'm actually the person doing the conga. So if you go to MIT City Home, which was the project, you'll find that on YouTube.
I mean, I think we should. We'll promote the shit out of that, you know? They should know that we now have the guy who was in that viral video here right now being interviewed.
Exactly. So we build prototypes, a big team, of engineers just thinking about how we can make them scalable, how we can make them...
But what was the prototype? You're saying it's a robot. Like, so tell me, so what was it that you prototyped?
So the apartment, this 200 square feet
All right,
apartment...
so you got this 200 square feet, 20 by 10, however you designed it. Boom.
It featured what we could call a robotic wall.
Mm-hmm.
And that robotic wall was like, if you know your Swiss Army knives, have everything that you need. So it was a Swiss Army knife for an apartment. It had a desk that would pop out when you need an office. It would have a bed that comes out when you need a bed. The whole thing would move if you had to use the bathroom to make the bathroom bigger. So it was basically a machine for living in some way. Now, it was a prototype. We showed it. It worked. And we showed it
But not iRobot. It wasn't a humanoid. That was moving stuff for you.
No,
this was moving walls.
It was a machine for living.
Okay, got it.
It was basically...
So we don't have to worry yet. What you're creating is going to take over the world. It's going to turn red, and we're all going to be like prisoners now.
But this is the interesting thing when you say that. Like, people get a bit scared about hearing robots in the context of homes. Like, if these are like humanoid robots that are going to kill us, like in the movies.
Or the Boston Dynamics where the dog is running around,
But let me tell you about robots that we already have at home. Think about the elevator. Think about the garage door opener. Think about appliances. Those are all robots too. We just don't call them robots anymore. We call them appliances.
Right.
So think about
I think
solutions.
until they're connected to IoT, to the cloud, I don't think I'm worried. Because now they are, I can just pull out the power, right?
Exactly. So anyway, we built prototypes for 5 years or so. And then at some point, we realized that, the next step was not more research, more writing theses and prototypes. The next step was to build a company. And that's when we launched Ori, which comes from Japanese, from origami. I think you mentioned the Eastern countries.
I did.
So that's the inspiration.
So that's the company you're running today. Ori Living starts in what, 2016, 2017?
2015.
2015, the company starts. So tell us about that journey.
So I will never forget, because as MIT geeks, we love, getting involved with technology and just building machines and robots. Yeah. But the first thing that the MIT Entrepreneurship Center taught us when we were launching the company was like, forget about the product for the next month or so. Go talk to people. Go there, talk to people, learn about problems. So the first thing we did, we went out there, we talked to about 200 studio renters, studio dwellers in Boston. That's where we're based. Now we're in New York too. So we went out there and
Nuevo York.
Huh?
Nuevo York. Nuevo York. It's Spanish, no?
Okay, fair enough.
What's Spanish for Boston? What did you call it?
Boston? Boston is Boston.
No? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They got nothing. No flavor. All right, go.
Anyway, Boston, New York. So anyway, we went out there. We talked to studio dwellers.
Yeah.
And we learned, that all of them were complaining about the same things. All of them were complaining about things like lack of separation of space in a studio. You move into a studio.
Yeah, what did they do? Like you're saying, even with the Ori using Japanese, they'd put up some type of wall that wasn't a complete wall, right? You had to divide the space because nothing was mobile, nothing was robotic, and nothing is moving.
So you want to have more than one activity at the same time in a studio. So that was one problem with traditional studios.
Yeah.
The second problem was lack of a proper living area, dining area, or office. When you live in a studio, it feels like your bedroom. You wanna have friends entertaining, and it's
if it's 200 square feet, what's the bed?
Exactly.
6 by 8?
Exactly.
It's literally a 30-year apartment.
The biggest space killer of all. And number 3, lack of storage.
Mm-hmm.
So what we said is, okay, let's start looking at those problems. Let's start taking all the technologies that we developed at MIT and create solutions for that. So the very first solution that we created, which we still sell, it's a solution called the Pocket Studio, which is a wall similar to the one from MIT, but it's a wall that separates a space when you need it, creates a massive living room when you need it to, and then it brings you a walk-in closet also.
All right, well, let me do this.
Okay.
Let me explain now, because, I'm a skeptic. I'm the Neanderthal you're supposed to be pitching to, why this shit works, right? So I look at it and I say, all right, Hasier, take me out to your studio. I wanna understand if this is real. If what you're saying, we could talk about robotics taking over the universe, but is it working, right? You're like, cool, come down to the Brooklyn Navy Yard. Come down to the Navy Yard, beautiful setup, and I'm like, but does it work, right? Because as a builder developer, I'm going to take this risk. Does this thing work? What about if you're not around? How does it operate? How does it feel? In New York, we have height issues. We have space issues. We have ADA codes. I'm like, it sounds amazing, but does this thing actually work? Yeah. And I got to tell you, for everyone out there to understand, when he's saying it moves and works, it does. The quality of it, incredible. You press the button, or a mobile first application, it does move. He's got a product for a studio, a 1, a 2, and you're like, wow, they really work. And what is it really, right? Like, how do you really explain it? It's basically everything is moving within the unit. So if you imagine just a square or a rectangle of an apartment, well, if the bed moved up, you have space underneath it, right? But then you'd want something to come in so that a desk would come down. That's what it's doing. So it really is creating the same volume of space into multiple rooms, because when you don't need it, it goes away. Then I was like, well, is this shit going to take an hour to move? No, it takes seconds. By the time, look, when I get up in the morning, I got to use the bathroom. If I literally got up in the morning, clicked the button, went to the bathroom, when I came back, it'd be the next room. We're not talking about a long time. I am talking about efficiency, which was so fascinating. So now, what is it solving for? It works, and I want the audience to know, not only does it work, the quality is there. We talked about design, and maybe one day he's got 5 options, but I believe that real estate in general, when it comes to finishes, is being selected for certain optionality. It's not an infinite. You're like, oh, I want it to be metal. That's not true. IKEA, restoration, and everyone else is formulating for you what your design aesthetic is supposed to be. You think you're creative, you're not, right? So the idea is like, I was like, oh, but what about if I want it to be green? That's bullshit. You make 3 or 4, it works, it's perfect. So now what? So what were the issues you now see in real estate, and what are you actually solving for as a profitable company?
Yeah, so at the end of the day, so the way we like to define this is expandable apartments, okay, in the market, which is what we're describing, apartments that feel and act as if they were much larger. So you need to look at it from both angles, the renter, the resident angle, and then the developer angle. From a tenant standpoint, at the end of the day, we know everybody would love to have a 1-bedroom, but almost nobody can afford a 1-bedroom these days. So they're stuck with the studios. Studios are dysfunctional. So what we do, for example, with our studio solutions is we make those studios feel more like a 1-bedroom, but with rent that is much closer to a studio. So that's how we create a better experience, for tenants. Now, for developers, there are 3 letters developers like you care about, and those are ROI. Return on investment. So at the end of the day, the equation is
because you're not giving it to them for free, right?
Correct.
They are taking a risk on FF&E on your product versus not paying for any furniture, right? Or furnishing an apartment. So that is a cost that it was never in any of their underwriting. So how did you overcome that?
So at the end of the day, there are 3 ways you get the ROI. You either get a higher price per square foot, you get a faster lease up because your units are more attractive, or you get higher retention. So at the end of the day, the way we penetrate the market, and we are in more than 1,000 apartments today, so this is not like MIT geeks just having fun in one apartment.
Wait, can we clap? We got people in the room. Let's 1,000 apartments, everybody. 1,000 apartments. Good work.
So we're across the country, and the way you get more apartments, and we have thousands coming, is by showing developers the numbers and showing how an apartment.
How did you prove that? Look, the 2 out of the 3, you can't prove. You can't say to me, unless you tell me some mathematical formula that's out there, that retention is higher. Because if you could do that, that's like what everyone's trying to prove, right? Retention. What was the second one? Not
speed to lease.
Speed to lease.
Yeah.
How do you that's I'm just for the marketplace, it's a correlation to me. Like I believe cause and effect, but I'm in technology and I'm interviewing you on Real Tech Talk. So like I'm a fucking believer. But what about everyone else? They don't. Yeah. But one you could prove is here's the marketplace for studio. Here's that is black and white. That's binary. But how are you proving those 3 metrics to developers who are skeptical that, I don't want to front and pay. I know it's not cheap.
Yeah. So I would agree with you. The third one is the hardest. So we do focus on the first and the second. And it's funny because they're usually a little bit of a balance, meaning if a developer pushes for higher price per square foot, their speed to lease might get affected. Some developers might not force too much of a higher price per square foot, but they might go for a higher speed to lease. Let me give you some examples. So for example, on the higher price per square foot, there's 2 ways to skin the cat. One is to think about a retrofit of a building. I take an existing building and I have these studios with ORI and these studios without ORI. And then I add a premium. If my studio feels more like the 1-bedroom and the 1-bedroom is $1,000 more expensive, I might charge as a developer $200 more, $300 more for this studio that feels like the 1-bedroom. That's one way to skin the cat. But wait,
just so I understand the model, the developer's paying you cash money for it, right?
Exactly. But
and then you're saying to the developer, how long should it be till they recoup that capital to get a return on your product?
Correct, exactly. Now, that's one way to skin the cat, which is a retrofit. The other way, which is even more exciting, is to start designing your buildings to have smaller units so you can fit more of those units and make them more functional, which is how you also get higher price per square foot.
Yeah, that's big big balls, right? What you just said is, okay, forget about, and I'm talking about bank financing and underwriting, forget about the paradigm of real estate that actually we know for the last 18 years is cyclical and we need to be risk averse. And you just said, yo, you're going to design this building around this product, right? And how is that working out? Are people financing that? Are people believing that paradigm? Because that is a fundamental change that I don't think people really understand.
I agree, but like in innovation, you have to go incrementally. So you have some developers and probably the lion's share of our projects, which are still, being a bit more conservative and going through the first track. But we have projects. One of them is in Texas, Fort Worth, from all places, probably the last place you would imagine this technology is being popular, where a developer literally changed the whole pro forma of the building and the whole design of the building so they could fit more units, and they were able to create something magical, which was...
Is it done? Is it done?
The deal is done and leased.
So it happened. They got the debt. They raised the capital. They installed it.
And they leased up the building in 1 month. But let me tell you about the interesting story here, because it touches on things like affordability. The average studio in Fort Worth, Texas is 500 square feet, about $1,500. These apartments were designed to be 350 square feet, but of course, with all these technologies in them, the rent was about $1,100. So they were able to market the cheapest, but also the coolest units in the neighborhood. That's why they got pre-leased. 50% of them got pre-leased.
And I don't know what that math is, but I know it's up per square foot, right? You said 350, 1,100, 500, 1,500.
At least 15, 20% higher price per square foot. So everybody won. The tenant got a cheaper rent. The developer got a higher price per square foot. And
they got more units.
Exactly.
And just to go back, why did they take that risk with you? What did they see? Because they are an innovator, right? We talk about the technology absorption life cycle. You're an innovator. Yeah. I'm an early adopter. I'm not innovating. I would say that building is an innovator. How did they know, or what are they made of that even made that feasible? I don't get it. I mean, what did they see?
At the end of the day, this is like, the theory of adoption of technologies. You're going to have your early adopters and you're going to have your mainstream market. The early adopters are the ones that are looking for an edge that makes them do something that no one else can do. So in this case, a developer that is looking at their pro forma, it doesn't really work. And all of a sudden they see a solution like this, like the key to make the building financially work.
Oh, so you're saying they were searching for a solution, not that it's a problem, but it's not that they had optionality. They would have been fucked otherwise, and you saved them.
Great. So that's
a great pitch.
I know you like to talk about vitamins and painkillers. This is where you become a true painkiller.
Yeah.
Now, when you're talking about the mainstream market,
By the way, medicine. We're not doing painkillers.
Okay, fair enough.
All right,
fair enough.
We're done with painkillers. Painkillers killed everyone. All right, just a medicine, just like antibiotic.
We'll take that. So now, when you think of the mainstream market is slightly different. They want predictable, measurable progress.
And they're old. Then they already made money. Why would I change shit?
But that's how adoption of technology works. The early adopters take more of the risk, start showing those case studies, and there's something interesting happens, which is you go as a company, as a startup, you go from pitching innovation and technology to pitching ROI and money. And that's how technology like this goes from, again, early adoption to fully mainstream in the market.
So are you saying that the market had to come to you a bit? Meaning the opportunity to insert yourself, besides you knew this is innovative, this shit works, I'm telling you, you're going to make more money. Yeah. Something in the marketplace had to shift. This guy was suffering, took the risk, it worked. Because he had no other options. It wasn't as if he wanted to do it. He had to do it. And you don't really care either way.
Need is the mother of innovation, as they say. So what I'm saying there is that first you have these local, innovative, smaller developers that are the ones, that are more comfortable with risk. They show the way to the rest of the industry. That gives you case studies. Now I can point to specific buildings with real numbers. That's what I sell now to the mainstream developers. I'm not selling you innovation, I'm selling you money in some way. I'm telling you that if you do this, based on all the data that we have, and the more buildings we have, the more developers we can go to. I'm just selling you an ROI. And that is a story to developers. It's an ROI story.
I think that's fascinating, right? When you think about it, you're like, oh, they don't see it. They're not innovators. It's because they had to. So that's an incredible story. You know what comes to my mind now? I say to myself, I want to know about the company now because I know this shit is going to break down. And this dude's in Texas. This guy's in Brooklyn. You're probably going to be in Europe soon. How do we now create a business that can manage just dealing with having to fix this shit? What do you do there? How do you solve that? Yeah. Because, look, we are just builder developers, you know what I'm saying? And I want to own that asset. Now I got more mechanicals in a building, and as we all know, keep it simple, stupid. The easier it is, the better for me, right?
Yeah, and that would probably be the argument that a lot of developers had against elevators at the beginning. And at some point, they realized that consumers really demanded elevators. So I see a lot of parallelisms with elevators, garage door openers, that at some point consumers say, you have to have it. I don't care what you think about your convenience, because to your point, as a developer, not putting an elevator, not putting a garage door opener, not putting an door is easier. So that's where you need to start with the consumer, kind of, and proving that they cannot live without this. But then, of course, you need to build the right redundancies. So the first redundancy that we thought about when we came out of MIT was, look, if the power goes out, it might not be often, but this thing needs to move manually. So in the very worst case, you have something that moves manually.
By the way, we did test that, me and you.
Yes.
Super light. I don't know what the cantilever was and why, and you could tell me there's a spring that's helping you, but it's like a power assist door when the power goes out. It was still light. It was, by the way, honestly, if, some people may not even want the power. It's fun. You hit the button, but technically, you could just do boop, boop. It was like with one finger. This, we're not, I mean, you have to understand, it is not heavy. It was easy. It was simple.
It's funny because manual is okay for occasional use, but what we realized, and the reason solutions like foldable beds and Murphy beds have not worked for studios so well, is because when you think about day-to-day living, you need to make it effortless. People have gotten used to Uber, Amazon. What do they have in common? They just make everything effortless.
Word.
It's one click, So we're bringing that to physical space, to atoms, in some way, and how we transform space.
No, I mean, I just feel like they need to know. It was simple. It was easy. If the power went out and you're like, oh my God, now we're fucked. Like, honestly, no. It was it was light. It was easy. I had no problem. To me, I think the biggest issue, by the way, and I'd love to hear what yours is, because mine is just this thesis, is without those guys in Texas, which now you got to market the shit out of that, right? We're actually even speaking to them because I'm just so fascinated with this. How do you think, besides those guys, you now really have to deal with the biggest partner in the deal, the bank? Right? You got to get the bank on board because they're the ones that are financing these things left and right. So you can show them in Fort Worth, Texas. But what do you think? What's your hardest market now? Or are you like, you know what? Go to the path of least resistance. Stay in Texas and run the state because they get it.
Yeah, and first of all, that's not the only example. So I could give you other examples. And my second favorite is in Buffalo, but that's for another day. Another market where you wouldn't expect it and where the developer really pushed for speed to lease, which was, remember, the other concept, how to lease faster. But it's funny because now you bring that up. I think sometimes tech innovators, we get a bit frustrated with developers. But we shouldn't get frustrated with developers because sometimes developers are actually very innovative. They just need to then convince the underwriters and the bankers to make the deal happen. So I understand why dynamic is there. And the answer is data. Like with one or two case studies that we had at the beginning, the first one was the hardest. How do we get the first developer to put these things in a building? How do we do that? Now, once you get that one, with that one case study, you can convince the next 5 or 10. Once you get 10, then you get to the next 50. And that's how you go from, again, local, smaller, innovative developer and maybe some financiers that are a bit more open to innovation to the bigger kind of brands that we are all aware of that are going to be naturally more conservative.
I guess you also need the zoning or the building code to kind of be in your favor as well, because in New York, we have like a minimum zoning room count, which means if you did what you're saying, we'd have way too many apartments, right? Like, so you could do like a blend in New York, but you could never because it'd be too many damn units.
But it's interesting because every market has challenges and opportunities too. Because think about New York for a second. What is a great opportunity in New York? Conversions. Offices, one, but hotels. Hotel conversions are very interesting because if the average studio is 400 to 500 square feet, the average hotel room is actually much smaller.
Right.
So if you are converting a hotel room to a residential apartment, now you are stuck with a 250 square feet apartment. What if you could implement these solutions now and make it feel more like 400 or 500?
No, it'd be fresh. Unfortunately, most hotels, unless they are already like non-compliant in a residential zoning district, can't go from hotel to resi unless, the city zoning resolution changes based on the fact that we need just so many more units, which would be a great opportunity, obviously, for you. But that brings up something else. What about hotels? Why couldn't Ori be in a hotel room? And now I don't know if you get more a night or, absorption is better, but hit the button and work from here, or hit the button and, have more room.
I mean, glad you bring that up because we actually announced a collaboration with Marriott about a year ago. So Marriott was looking at all our work in multifamily, and they basically thought what you were thinking, which is, what if we could, integrate these ideas into hotels, whether it's short-term, but also extended stay, which is much closer to multifamily. So we are now working with them. There's the first ever hotel room with Ori is already available in Bethesda, very close to the
You're really hitting all the popular markets, huh?
There you go. Yeah, but look at that. But that's interesting because that tells you how and why this is not just a New York, San Francisco, Boston thing. This is a much bigger idea than that.
I think the bottom line is innovator's dilemma. Let them not see you coming. I mean, now, obviously, with this podcast and our massive audience, it's totally different. But the bottom line, don't let them see you coming. By the time you figure it out in these cities, you're already too late.
But what I would say, though, that doesn't mean we're not in New York, San Francisco, and those cities. I'm just giving you the examples that might, shake up your thinking a little bit and be like, wow, this is not just for the primary markets. This is also secondary and tertiary markets. But the point about hospitality, that's the first hotel room, but you can actually go to that hotel and stay in it. That's what we're excited about. Like, think about these solutions. Like, I like to think about them as 1 night stays, 1 year stays, 10-year stays. So you have 1 night stays, hotels, 1 year stays, residential apartment buildings, 10-year stays. We could talk about condos all day. At the end of the day, these ideas are agnostic of any specific kind of market. Everybody could use a little bit of, transformation and a space that feels bigger than it is.
Every day we hear city of New York, vacant apartments, not being rented. We need more units. We need more space. And you're hitting the nail on the head with a solution within whatever the existing apartments are. We could make more apartments in the existing area to solve some of the housing crisis that we have in New York today by bringing in robotics. I mean, simple, easy, right? It applies to some of the issues that are like the most important of our time here in these major cities, right? And the affordability issues. And not only you're solving, you could solve both of them. So I assume you're trying to work with the government so they give you some kind of approval. Which is, I think, fascinating. But listen, we're almost out of time. And what I like to ask all my guests is a little bit about their humanity. So you're MIT, engineer, super technical. What do you do? What is the yin to your yang? What do you do on the other side of your life in order to balance all of that technicality?
So what I didn't tell you about my story is that before I became an engineer, I was going through a professional soccer career. Football, as we like to call it.
Football?
The real football. The real football,
yeah.
With your foot and with a ball.
Who, with Real?
What is that?
Barcelona? Who was promoting you?
I was in the youth academy of Real Sociedad, which right now is
We're going to need proof of this. You can say it to us here. You can, we're not checking you in Europe, but we're going to need the paperwork. We're going to need to know you were actually on that team.
Fair enough. So anyway, I was going through youth academy system, and then when I was 18, I had this difficult decision to make because we don't have college sports, NCAA in Europe. So I had to choose between engineering and soccer. I ended up choosing engineering. But to your question, soccer still keeps me, alive and grounded, and I like to have that, balance. I'm
gonna go out on a limb.
Okay.
And your prospects in engineering were better because I don't care who you are, the fame, the fortune, the cars. You're doing it the hard way. I would have went with that if that was the case, but. All right, listen, we appreciate your time. We appreciate you coming through. Honestly, it's fascinating. So tell us, how can people, besides this viral YouTube video, how are they going to find you?
So the best way is, of course, the website, oriliving.com. And we have, of course, a path for developers to work with us, but we also have a path for renters to find those 1,000 apartments. So if you're looking for an apartment in cities from San Francisco to New York to Spokane, Buffalo, Fort Worth,
Bethesda, Boston, New York,
go there and you can find all these apartments and you can rent an apartment today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, brother. Thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
I mean, that was incredible. We're out there, we're looking for ideas from technologists, not only looking for the idea, right? Because technology is always talking about a problem. Real estate's always talking about a solution and an ROI. And here you have robotics, hardware, MIT, and when they brought that together, it actually worked, people. He is solving for a density issue. He is solving for an affordability issue. No wonder IKEA, Google, Coastal Ventures are in on this deal. This is one of those technologies that is going to be out there, and it's not just software, which is sexy. It's hardware, which is hard. So you got to go check out Ori Living, see if you're interested in one of those units, because this man right here is changing a part of real estate, and that was the whole premise of this thing. I was going to bring people to you that are making an effective change in the game. So I hope you enjoyed it. Like and follow. Sponsorship coming. Love you, peeps, And, oh, by the way, if you see me on the street, say what's up to the big man.